I hope the first part was informative. You might have come across different challenges which were explained in the yesterday's class. So, today we are going to study more about federalism, features of federalism, what makes India a federal country, and the third tier of the government, that is the Panchayati Raj government. So, welcome to the video again. Let's begin. So, what are we going to study today? Today, we are going to study the linguistic states, language policy, center and state relations, decentralization, and the third level of government, normally called as the Panchayati Raj government. So, let's begin with the reasons for success of federalism in India, or else we can call as the features which makes India a federal country. What makes India a federal country? First one, linguistic states. What is linguistic? Language based. The creation of linguistic states was the first and a major test for democratic politics in our country. Remember, I told you about the efforts of Sardar Patel to bring all the princely states together. When he brought all the princely states together, we faced a lot of problems because many old states have vanished and many new states had to be created because of their boundary areas, language, culture. So that was done after the independence, where the boundaries of several old states of India were changed in order to create new states. First basis to do this was the language which they spoke in that region. Some states were not created on the basis of language but to recognize differences based on culture. For example, if you see the northeastern states where the language is not uniform. Yes, in Assam they speak Assamese, but not in Arunachal, Mizoram, Tripura, Sikkim. The the tribal people who live there speak different dialects of the language, so it is not possible to carve out a separate state for them. So they are recognized on the basis of culture, ethnicity, or geography. Now these include the states like Nagaland, Uttarakhand, and Jharkhand. Based on the language, the first one to be formed was Andhra Pradesh. Now I want you to write the name in the comment box. Whose effort was it that the government had to carve Andhra Pradesh first? He is a legendary person who died in that moment too. Experience has shown that the formation of linguistic states actually made the country more united. It has also made administration much easier. Now this is not the updated map of India, but pretty much the old one. Why it is in color? Because I wanted to show the color based on the language. You can see Karnataka, people who speak Kannada. Andhra Pradesh, again there is Telangana here, sorry for that one. People who speak Telugu, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Maharashtra. So these states are carved based on the language. You can see here 1956 when it was carved. Andhra Pradesh was the first one to become, Karnataka was called as Mysore, Tamil Nadu was Madras. You can see all the other provinces here. Now, detail about that is here. 1956 State Reorganization Act takes effect. 14 states and 6 union territories formed. 1951 it was like this. You can see the provinces, right? They do not exist anymore. 1966 Punjab to Haryana, and 1972 is Assam, Arunachal, right? Assam, Arunachal was in Assam and Meghalaya, so they got separated in 72. And as of now, you can see 28 states and 9 union territories. Second one is the language policy. Second test for Indian Federation is the language policy. Our constitution did not give the status of national language to any one language. Hindi is identified as the official language, remember. And Hindi is spoken by nearly 40% of Indians. It's a mother tongue of 40% of the Indians normally spoken in the northern side of India. Therefore, there are so many safeguards to protect other languages too. Besides Hindi, there are 21 other languages recognized as scheduled languages in the 8th schedule of the Constitution. It has Kannada, Tamil, Telugu, right? Promotion of Hindi continues to be the official policy of Government of India. Hindi is also called as the Raj Bhasha. Promotion does not mean the central government can impose Hindi on states where people speak a different language. For example, yesterday I told you about the case of Tamil Nadu or Kerala or Karnataka. The central government cannot impose that we have to compulsorily speak Hindi. The flexibility shown by Indian political leaders helped our country avoid the kind of situation that Sri Lanka finds itself in. So, Sri Lanka, there are people who speak Sinhalese, people who speak uh, Tamil. So they obviously have problems leading into the civil war that we do not have here. Yeah, this is, you can see based on the languages. In the first picture you can see different scripts and the languages. In the second picture you can see the population. Look at Hindi, it is spoken by so many people, nearly, can we say, half of India, right? Now you can see the other languages which are spoken, right? You can see in the north that a lot of people speak Hindi, Punjabi, Urdu in JNK, Gujarati, Bengali, Odia being other prominent ones. There are so many languages here, remember. Regional languages like Kannada, Telugu, Tamil, and Malayalam in the south of India, Goa, Konkani, and this is the script. The language policy of India, Article 343, official language of the Union, that is Hindi. Article 345, official language or languages of a state. We have different language. Kannada is the official language of Karnataka. Article 348, languages to be used in the Supreme Court and the High Court, Hindi and English, normally English. The court language will be in English. Art 351, Article 351, the directives for development of Hindi language, Raj Bhasha. To develop the Raj Bhasha, there are certain provisions which should be taken care. That's why we will have a lot of competitions in school and the celebration of Hindi Pakwada. Remember Hindi Pakwada? Third one is the center state relations. Now, central government and the state government should be like having a good relationship. Then that's how the federalism or the federal structure gets strengthened. Now, what happens when there are different parties in central and the state government? That creates problems. Now, let us see two situations. First one, situation during Congress monopoly. A lot of years from 2000 to 2010, 2014 there was, I think it is 2004 to 2014, 10 years it was. Manmohan Singh led Congress led UPA government for major part of the country. Some same party was in power in both center and the state. As a result, state governments were not in a position to enjoy their rights because all of the rights were enjoyed by central government. There was a different party in power in a particular state, central government tried to undermine its influence. Let us say you have a central government, party in central government and a BJP party in state government. Normally, the central government tries to assert its authority on the state government. If it is the same party, okay. But it is a different party, they don't want to make sure that the state government gets the credit. So the central government will be undermining or will use the constitution to misuse or topple the unfriendly government in those states. Look at the drama that happened in Maharashtra and the drama happened in Karnataka recently. Will give you a clear picture of what the central government can do. Situation in the era of coalition. What about the coalition? After 1989, the election results showed a trend which shifted to the multi party coalition government. So not a single party got the majority. Now it is BJP which is getting the majority. As a result, a new culture of power sharing and respect for the autonomy of state governments has developed. It can be said that now the federalism is more developed in India because the power is shared with the central government and the state government. In the state government, the power is shared between so many political parties. Maharashtra's example is a very good one, right? Shiv Sena, NCP, Congress. You can see here, this is a picture which is taken from obviously our textbook. You can see Indira Gandhi and the chief ministers of all the states trying to get power. They look like beggars and she's dishing out, she's giving them powers. So it is, or it can be called as monopoly. Now look at another picture which I got it: federalism and federalism. See, in UPA, that is the Congress government, it's like an octopus, it controls the state. But in the NDA, that is led by BJP, it says center is like a cow and states are like the sons and the daughters of the cow, and they can go and they can, right, ask anything from their mother. And you can see that person holding the card: states revenue share 10% up. More than center state relations, we believe in state centered relations. Right? This is a new one which I got. It was pretty interesting to share it with you. You can comment on these two cartoons down below. One famous person who has drawn the cartoon is R.K. Lakshman. R.K. Lakshman is no more. His cartoons are used in our textbook. Now let's summarize the reasons for success of federalism in India, or what makes India a federal country. Linguistic state, language policy, center state relations. What is the linguistic diversity of India? As per the latest census report, it's 91. Actually, we should have 2011. 2021 should have happened. These languages were grouped together under some major languages, whichever the languages that we have. For example, languages like Bhojpuri, Magadhi, Bundelkhandi, Chhattisgarhi, Rajasthani, Bhili were grouped together under Hindi. There are so many languages in Bhojpuri itself, like Koita, Maithili, right? They are all grouped under a language, that is Hindi. Even after this grouping, the census found 114 major languages. Of these, 22 are now included in the 8th schedule of the Indian Constitution, and they are called as scheduled languages. The others are called non-scheduled languages. In terms of the languages, India is perhaps the most diverse country in the world. Some statistics regarding this is the Chinese Mandarin is the highest spoken language in the world, and that day Rajavardhan pointed out about Tulu trying to get into the 8th schedule of the Indian Constitution, or else being called as a scheduled language. Now let's get back to something interesting, that is decentralization in India. Vast country like India cannot be run only through two tiers of government. So states in India, some states are as big as countries of Europe, like Belgium is probably as big as Haryana. Haryana is as big as Belgium. That's the way to put it. In terms of population, Uttar Pradesh is bigger than Russia. Maharashtra is big as Germany. Many of the states are internally very diverse, or maybe in the dialect or the language or eating habits or culture. So, federal power sharing in India needs another tier of government below the state government, that is the rational. Why the idea of having a decentralization in India? Because India is a diverse country. There is, you can count a large number of problems and issues which are actually best settled at the local level. People have better knowledge in their locality, we will have more idea about our own problem. So it is better to get the power, or to spend money, how to manage things more efficiently, should be made at the local level. It is possible to directly participate in the decision making and as well as spend money correctly. Now, it's a famous line which is said by Rajiv Gandhi, former prime minister, that if central government releases 100 rupees from the central government till it reaches the common man in the village, it becomes 70 paisa. That's what I heard. So that is why the corruption, the bureaucracy, how it works, the money cannot be spent clearly with the central government. So there needs to be a government which can spend efficiently, where the people in the local level participate in the decision making and spending. Now, what happens with this? This helps to inculcate a habit of democratic participation. A lot of people will participate, will get into politics. Local government is the best way to realize the important principle of democracy, that is, the local self government. Now, a major step towards decentralization was taken in 1992, where the 72nd and the 73rd Amendment to the Constitution had brought the third tier of democracy, the Panchayati Raj. Now, these are the features of Panchayati Raj, obviously very important, and it's very easy to remember too. So, nothing to worry, guys. It's very easy. First, this is the first one. Now, it is mandatorily constitutionally mandatory to hold regular elections to local government bodies. Local government bodies will also have elections. First one. The second one, seats are reserved in the elected bodies and the executive heads of these institutions for the scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, and other backward classes, SC, ST, and OBC. The seat are reserved for SC, ST, OBC. They are reserved. SC, ST are reserved in the legislative also as well. Third one, at least one third of the positions are reserved for women. This is unique, isn't it? Only in India, local level government provides one third of the seats for women, or 33%. Now remember, this changes according to the state. Some states give 50% of the reservation to women. Just find out which states give more reservation to women. You will be surprised to know. Fourth one, an independent institution called the State Election Commission. We have a chief election commission. It's the elections for the MP and the MLA. But to conduct the local level election, we need a state election commission, independent state election commission, which conducts election for the panchayat and the municipal elections. Recently, they happened in Mangalore as well. I told you the third tier is called the Panchayati Raj. What is Panchayati Raj? The state governments are required to share some powers and revenue with local government bodies, right? Just like the central does with the state. The nature of sharing varies from state to state. Rural local government is popularly known by the name Panchayati Raj. Each village, a group of villages in some states, has a Gram Panchayat. This is a council consisting of several ward members. In a Gram Panchayat, there will be ward, often called Panch, and a president called Sarpanch. Sarpanch is like the president. Pradhan भी बोलते हैं, सरपंच भी बोलते हैं, अध्यक्षा, chairman. They are directly elected by all the adult population living in that ward or village. It is the decision making body for the entire village, that is the Gram Sabha, right? Gram Panchayat. The Panchayat works under the overall supervision of the Gram Sabha. All the voters in the village are its members, the Gram Sabha, right? It has to meet at least twice or thrice in a year to approve the annual budget of the Gram Panchayat. Normally, it meets twice, 6 months once, and to review the performance of the Gram Panchayat. There will be an officer called the Panchayat Development Officer, or else called as the PDO. You can see here the rationale behind the 92 73rd Amendment was the Gandhiji's line, the future of India lies in its villages. That's what Gandhiji said. Remember, that's why 24th April is also celebrated as National Panchayati Raj Day. I had put you this when I was teaching. So, what has the 92nd, that is 73rd Amendment in 1992 provided? It has provided three-tier government in the local government also, village level, block level, and district level. Village level being the basic one. Above it is the block level. Above it is the district level. So, it works similarly just like the state government and the central government does. The local government structure goes right up to the district level. A few gram panchayats are grouped together to form what is usually called a panchayat samiti or block or mandal. We call in Karnataka as taluk. The members of this representative body are elected by the all panchayat members in that area. Now this is changed now. People elect for all. All the panchayat samitis or mandals in a district together constitute a Jilla Parishad, or we call it as Jilla Panchayat. Most members of the Jilla Parishad are elected. Yes, not most, all the members are elected. Only the nominating members will be that area MLA, and MP will be the ex officio members or the nominating members. Members of the Lok Sabha and the MLA of that district and some other officials are also its members. Yeah, ex officio members. Jilla Parishad chairperson is the political head of the Jilla Parishad. Now, if it is a Jilla Parishad, it is the chairman or the chairperson. If it is a corporation, it is he is called as the mayor, right? And the ward, they are called corporators. Yes, similarly, local government bodies exist for urban. I told you the municipalities are set up in towns, for example, Mangalore Municipal Corporation, MCC, or you can bigger one if you want, you can go for Bengaluru, that is the BBMP, Brihat Bengaluru Municipal Corporation, Mahanagara Palike. Big cities are constituted into municipal corporation. Both municipalities and municipal corporations are controlled by elected bodies. It's a elected body of corporators. They selecting one as the mayor, right? You can comment down who is the mayor of Mangaluru. You can comment down here. Municipal chairperson is the political head of the municipality. In a municipal corporation, such an officer is called the mayor. We have reached to the end of the chapter. It's a pretty easy one. Democratic politics, that's the name of the whole textbook that you're going to study this year and the last year also. This new system of local government is the largest experiment in democracy conducted anywhere in the world. Why? Because we are the largest democratic country. There are now about 36 lakh elected representatives in the panchayat. Now, obviously, this number is more. When the book was written, it is 36 lakh. This number is bigger than the population. Just imagine. The representatives in our country is more than some of the population of the country, right? Constitutional status for local government has helped to deepen democracy in our country. A lot of amendments have been done. The positions of Jilla Panchayat chairman has been upgraded to a state government, probably like an MLA. They get their car, they get salary too. At the same time, there are many difficulties, like elections are held regularly and enthusiastically. Gram Sabhas are not held regularly. It creates problems. Remember that in a Gram Sabha or in the level of Gram Panchayat, where politicized, it has become a politicized election now, where people from a single family, a brother is fighting for some other party, his brother is fighting for some other party, creates uh, division in the family. We have seen such level where the father is contesting from X party and his son is contesting from Y party. So that creates a rift in probably the traditional way of a family. So that is not good, to be very honest. Most state governments have not transferred significant powers to the local government, nor they have given adequate resources. Now there are so many agendas here. Central government says the Gram Panchayat will be made as a Wi-Fi, panchayat or internet panchayat, and the amount of grant given to a single panchayat will be in crores. The last time I heard was the panchayats in Kerala get most donation, a grant, not donation, grant compared to any other village panchayats in India. Thus, we are still a long way from realizing the idea of self government put forward by Mahatma Gandhi ji. I hope you have understood this chapter. If no, feel free to put questions. I am always there. That brings to the end of part 2. Thanks for watching the chapter Federalism. Remember, the important questions in this one would be features of federalism, what makes India a federal country, features of the 92 decentralization, and features of the third tier or the Panchayati Raj. So I expect 5 marks from this chapter, and there are some picture based questions too. In this chapter, we'll discuss them in the live interactive class. Till then, it's goodbye and take care.